So people can always catch up by watching the video, and it's your responsibility to do that. So we click on con messages, and now we're going to go to the login prompt property there. We have to make sure that is false. Login prompt, we don't want to be logging in every time we connect to the database. So click on login prompt, untick that true, make it false. Then the most important of all is to get our connection string. The actual invisible connection, there it is, says connection string. Click in the white space next to that, and then click the three dots. Click the three dots next to connection string, and then you should have this message come up, and we are going to click on build. And this is very important. If you don't choose the right version here, then you won't be connected either properly. So you've got to click on the JET. Always choose JET 4.0. At this point, we have to remind ourselves about our Access database and make sure that it is a .mdb, in other words, 2003 version, but we did already save it as that. So we're fine. So the Microsoft JET 4.0, and then we click on Next. And then over here, well, delete admin. And then there's three dots over there. And this is all very important steps that we're following here now. Those three dots, we are going to, you see it will immediately goes to our database, .mdb. Now, if you don't have a .mdb file in your folder where your program is, remember we saved this program in the folder where the database is. This is why we could connect to the database. So if you don't have a .mdb database, then you won't be able to see it. And then we click open, and then you click on test connection, and it says succeeded, and you click OK, but then you do not click OK after that. You're going to remove the path of that and just have messages.mdb. So we first formed the connection with the path, tested it, and then we remove the path. And this is so that you don't have to keep on searching for the database whenever you open your program, because obviously you're going to open it in another place. Test the connection again to make sure. And click OK, and then you can click OK. And now you have successfully connected your database. You do not click on anything else over here. You leave it alone. Those are the only things you fiddle with in con messages. Now, for the other things, these are the important ones. First of all, we have to name them according to the tables of our database. But the query, we're going to name it according to the actual database itself. So I'm going to call this ADO query component QRY. You've got to use the prefix QRY, and then the name of your database. So go click on ADO query. Let's find the name property. And you say QRY and whatever your database is called. Whatever your database is called. QRY and whatever your database is called. And then you go to the connection component and choose con messages. Sorry, the connection property. You're clicking on query messages. You've changed the name to QRY and the name of the database. Then you find the connection property and choose the connection component, which is con, whatever you name that other thing there. So you can imagine an invisible line drawn from query messages to con messages. Right, we're left with two others. Now to name these, we need to go and see what tables we have. You're going to go to your tables and you're going to call your ADO table component TBL, whatever one table is, and TBL, whatever the other table is. Okay. Now, always know what is your one, which one is your one side, which one is your many side, for later on when we do actual programming, and you can compare the table, your tables with my tables as we go along. So we click on the actual table, ADO table component. Are you with me, yes or no? We're in our data module. We're clicking on the ADO table 1. We're going to go to the name property. N-A-M-E. And by the way, everything you're doing now, you're going to be doing again in grade 12. Exactly this. But, of course, you will do it on your own then. ADO table 1 component, we're going to go to the name property and call it TBL. What is one table called? I actually can't even remember anymore. Okay. Yeah, I was wrong. Yeah. By the way, I made a mistake giving my table name the same name as the database itself, without an S, of course. Don't do that. So I've got one called TBL, whatever that is, and then whatever that table we want that one to connect to, and then the other ADO table component called TBL, what your second table is. So once we've named them, we can now go and connect them to the actual table in the database itself, but via the connection component, of course. And this is a very tricky part. Some people make a mistake here and then they wonder why their database isn't their connection isn't working. We're going to click on ADO table component, then we're going to go to the connection property, which is here, and we choose con messages. Just like we did with the query component, we change the name, choose the connection property. Then we're going to go to the table name property, table name. Now we choose which table we want to connect to, like such. And then we scroll up to where it says active and we click to make it true. Okay, next thing, TBL recipient. Sorry, my other table. You don't do anything else. Now we're going to go to TBL recipient. We go to find our connection component, con, whatever it is. Then we go to the table name property. Table name, not name. We've changed the name already. We choose the table name that we want to connect to. And then we go to the active property, true. Now we've done the query already. We don't need to do anything more with the query component. Go and do a file save all. If you missed out anything that we did today, then it's your responsibility to go home and watch the video on the YouTube channel so that you catch up for the next lesson, okay? Because we're going to do more of this every day. And your program has to be at the same level, otherwise you're going to fall behind terribly. And I'm not going to help you catch up. You're going to have to catch up on your own by watching the videos. Right, now we're going to go to the last part of setting up our data module, then we'll be finished with it. And that is putting in components on the that are going to connect to the database grids of the main program. And they're called data sources. And we need a data source for each of these three here. And we're going to name them according to which ones they're going to be connected to. So to find the data source, we find data access. Under data access, you'll see data source. We click on one data source and we go and put it next to each one. Click on the data source and put one next to each of those other components. Putting them in the place definitely helps to tidy your brain. You can't think straight when things are not in order. Okay, have you all got those on? Am I going too fast? Tell me if I'm going too fast. Just put up your hand and say, ma'am, you're going too fast, okay? This is very important to make your program work. Now, for each of these data sources, we're going to name them according to which ADO table or ADO query component they're going to connect to. Obviously, this one here, data source 1, we're going to connect to TBL message. So I'm going to give it the name. We're going to go to the name property. So we click on it, go to the name property, and then the prefix is always data source, so it's data DSR, data source, TBL, and then the rest of the table name, DSR, and then the table, the ADO table component name that we are connecting it to. And then while we're here in the properties of the data source, we can go to the data set. We can then go to the data set, click there, and we can choose TBL and the right table component that it's connecting to. So that's that done. It's very important to have the data source with the right ADO table component name as well with it, because you'll see just now when we go and connect to the database grids themselves. We can also change the connection of the data source in code. We now, and take note, we don't write code in this data module. All we do is name the components and choose their properties and connect them applicably. We're now in this, we're still over here. Don't do your own thing. Data source 2. We're going to click on that, and we're going to give it the name of the DSR, TBL, whatever your table name is. And then we choose the data set. We make sure it is this right table. And then with data source 3, we click on data source 3, go to the name property. We can call it DSR, QRY, whatever that query component name is. And then we say data set property is that query component. Once you've done all of that, your database should not be fiddled with again. You leave it alone completely. If you've done it all correctly, you won't have to ever revisit this data module. Now you do file, save all, just to be sure that all of our hard work is not going to disappear anytime soon. And we're now going to set up our connection to our main program. And the way that the main program is going to see the database is through database grids. But before we can do that, we're going to actually make a nice page control setup here as well. We have to have page controls. I don't want to see any multiforms in your programs. Okay, fine, except for the exception maybe. But you have to really know what you're doing to do multiforms. It's not easy. So the page control is much easier and looks neater as well, and it's easier to mark and see what you're doing. So go to this top here where it says Tool Palette. We're in the main program now. The Tool Palette, type Page Control and go and click on T Page Control, and then draw a box as large as your form with just a little bit at the bottom left, because you're going to put a button over here at the bottom. It doesn't matter if all your programs look the same. You're going to change it with your colors and components rearranged and so on. Okay. So here's a page control. We make space for a button at the bottom here, because we are going to put a button there. And while you're about it, go and put a button there underneath the page control, because this is going to be your home button. You can have it in the center or the left or the right, wherever you want, but you do need to have a home button, whether it's the top or the left or the right or wherever it is. It needs to be out of the page control, not part of the page control. Now, we'll worry about naming the button later. In fact, we're going to do lots of naming, and only afterwards you're going to worry about the captions. But let's first go and get our page control. Click on page control, and I don't mind if you all call it PGC, okay? That's not an issue. PGC, name for the page control, is fine. PGC, you can all call your page control PGC. That's not a problem. Now we're going to add tab sheets to this page control. And the general structure would be as follows in order to streamline your program, but you can modify here and there, but the basic structure we're going to do is this. If we look at our tables, we have two tables. You must remember that in your database, you're going to add, edit, and delete things in a table. Not so. You're either going to add a new whatever, or you'll edit or change something, or you'll delete something. Okay, we'll also do reports on our tables. We'll also display certain things of the tables. So that's another tab sheet. So we're going to have a tab sheet for adding something to one table, a tab sheet for editing something in one table, a tab sheet for deleting something in one table, and we do the same for this. And then we'll have an extra tab sheet for queries or reports. So in all, 6, 7 tab sheets. 3 for one table, 3 for another table, and 1 for this. That's not a lot. And then 1 tab sheet for the home page. So right click on your PGC, click on new page, and put in 8 pages. Right click on your PGC and go to new page until we have 8 pages. Quiet. Right, this tab sheet we're going to call, there's a name property there, we're going to go straight away and name these tab sheets before we go any further. So remember that in your tab sheets you have to click on the left hand side to select them, okay? I know we have tabs there, they're going to look very messy, but at the end of your program, when you finish writing all your code, you have to make the tab visible false. Your program should be so streamlined that you do not need to have the tabs there. But while your program...